Hi, good morning. Yesterday on Shabbos, Parshas Bamidbar, I spoke about the question whether or not the Rambam also believed if Malachim or angels existed. It's a very valid question because a few weeks back, I spoke about the context that the Rambam did not believe anything about the Shadim or anything that is related to that. And so the question of whether angels exist is something which I thought this was very relevant. And also I knew by the time already that this question is not so easy to answer. So in this week's Parsha, we see the encampment around the Mishkan. When the Mishkan was built, the encampment around it was actually through the four sides, four different leaders. You have Dan, you have Yehuda, you have Reuven and Ephraim. As for each four of the sides of the Mishkan, they were encamped with all the 12 different the Golim flags, if you want. And actually, the structure that it appears in the Torah is the Medrash says that when the Klal Yisrael during the Har Sinai, the Isgalus of the Shekhinah during Har Sinai, they saw that the Malachim up there were 220,000 Malachim that came down, and they were structured around HaKadosh Baruch Hu also with flags, etc. And so they really wanted it also. They thought that they would also like to be follow the same structure as what happens above. And this is exactly what happens. And the same structure that actually is up there with the Malachim around them is also how it is down here. Now, what is interesting is that the Zohar and the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, they all bring down that the structure follows the four Malachim that surrounds HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As we know, we say it in the Kriya Shema Alamito at the end, those who have still patience to go all the way to the end. And there it says, Mimini Michoel, Mismoli Gavriel, Milfonai Uriel, and Meachorai is Raphael. So we always mention those four Malachim, those four angels, as being very well positioned around HaKadosh Baruch Hu, around the Kisei HaKovod. And similarly, it says the Zohar is also the four different camps that are around the Mishkan. In the Zohar, on this week's Parsha, it says, and I will read you the Hebrew way, the Hebrew translation, Arba machma yisein la'arba tzedidei ha'olam, v'nimtzoim shnei moser, av koch lemato k'mo shelemalo. Like it is down is also like this is up there in the heavens. V'nusa b'rishon degel machne Yehuda, mul machne Uriel. So Machne Yehuda is the one that is opposite of is actually the equivalent of the Machne from the Malach Uriel, Machne Reuven mul Machne Michoel. And so the Zohar already starts saying that the two, and then it continues. Of course, the idea is to continue with the 3 and the 4. Is that Yehuda is towards the east, and therefore he is the one that the east is actually the front. This is another discussion that we had yesterday, is that when the Torah speaks about a left of a city or right, actually the position to which the face is facing is not to the north, like by us today. Today, when I would say this is to the left of Antwerp, I would of course mean to the west of Antwerp, because I would put my face to the north. In the Torah, it's not like that. In the Torah, whenever you put, when you say something is left, it's actually what you have to do is you have to put your face towards the east, and then left then would mean to the north. This is clearly in Lech Lecho, twice actually in Lech Lecho. In Lech Lecho, it says that they went, they were fighting, Avraham was fighting with the kings to save Lot, and it says, Asher mismoil at choivo, it says in Posuk Tesbo from Perek Yudalet, at choivo asher mismoil ledamosek. So they were from Til Choivo, which was on the left side of Damosek. So what is the left side? How do you have to position yourself in order to know what is the left side? And And so here it says, the Targum says, Ad choivo di mitzipuno l'damosek. Tzipuno is Tzophon, means the north. In other words, if my left side is north, that means that my front is actually to the east. Similarly, as David Yachtman showed me very nicely, in the same parsha actually, when they split up, Avram and Lot started to split up, they also, it says, Im hasmoil ve'emino ve'im hayumin ve'asmi'ilo. So if you will go left, I will go right. If you will go right, I will go left. And what is the right and left? It's not west and east or east and west, but it is Rash Unklus im atlet sipuno va'no ledroimo. If you will go to the north, I will go to the south. This is, in other words, again, here we see left is actually north. And if you will go to the droim, in other words, if you will go to the right side, the right side, I will go to the left side, which is to the north. So it seems that the positioning when the Torah says something is to the left of a city, it's the face is always positioned to Mizrach, to the east. And this is in this week's parsha, it's clearly like that twice. It's clearly like that. And whenever the Torah speaks about the front, it always means about the east side. In this week's parsha, we see it both from perspective of the Israelites, the Israel, when they were around it. There also we see that when it speaks about Va'achonim Kedmo, Kedmo means to the front, means to the east. Kodam is always before, so it's the one that is before you, and that is what it's called, therefore, the east. And this is, we see specifically more by the Levim, Va'achonim Lifnei HaMishkan Kedmo. So in the front of the Mishkan means, Kedmo means, in other words, to the east. And when it says that something is to the west, then Mishpachos HaGirshuni Acharei HaMishkan Yachanu Yomo. Behind the Mishkan is Yomo. Yomo is called west. Why is it called west? Yomo, because the Yam HaTichon, which was in Eretz Yisrael and not in Sinai. And that's something very interesting, that the Torah speaks as if it is in Eretz Yisrael, where indeed the west is considered Yomo, and the Negev, Negbo, is because of the Negev, is considered the south. The left side is considered the Tzophon. Why is Tzophon the name Tzophon? I saw two theories, possible theories. One of them is because they were there, the Baal Tzophon and the Harad Tzophon. There were the mountains up in the north. There were mountains that possibly were even Avodah Zorah. That's why it's called Baal Tzophon. But these were the names of the mountainy area, very much up in the north, maybe even going to Syria or Turkey or whatever, but quite high in up north. That's why it's called Tzophon, because of a particular like Negev and like the Yam is left and right, and therefore they're also the Tzophon. But for the east, it's always because of Mizrach. It's clearly the Mizrach is called Mizrach because it's the sun that goes up and is shining towards us. And it's also called Kedem. Kodem is because it's the front of us. It's what is before us. On the other hand, the second opinion why it's called Tzophon is because in the northern hemisphere, when the sun goes up, it always goes up from where we are towards the south. We always see the sun in the winter going up very, very deep, very short, coming up in the south into the east side and then going to the southwest side. When it's in the summer, we see it quite high above our faces, kind of very high over our heads. But never do we see the sun going all the way down to the north. In other words, maybe that's why, since the north never receives the sun, it is as if it is a hidden place. It's dark and never hidden. It's a possibility. These are theories why it's called Tzophon. But in any case, the front is always considered the eastern side for some reason, which I cannot explain. But the possible explanation is that simply this is the position that everybody knows. The north we only know because we have a compass, but in the time of the Torah there was no compass, and so the only position that everybody knew is when did the sun come up, and that's always to the east. And so the front was always positioned to the east. Now, when we speak about the front, it is, and then the voice called the east. So this is where Uriel is. The Malach Uriel is to the east. Maybe that's why it's called Uriel. Uriel is from the oil, from light, and this is where the sun comes up. There's also a very interesting Zoya that's similar to what we say here. Is actually that because also in by now Parsha of Bamidbar, when he speaks about the camp of the Levium, the Machna Levio, there he also speaks, when he speaks about right or left, he speaks about the Yerech. The Yerech are the hips. And so this is already very close to a Kabbalistic opinion, that the left and the right are actually the legs of Kudsho B'richu, kind of, the Gavi of course. But there also he speaks about the Yerech. So when we speak about the side of a building, the north is the east is considered the front of a building, the west is considered the back of the building, and the two sides are considered the hips, the Yerech that there is. Because al Yerech hamishkon yachanu tzepoino, and also yachanu al Yerech hamishkon teimono. Teiman means Yamin, means to the right side is actually the Teimono means indeed Yamin is on the right side, and this is the south, and Yerech HaMishkon Yachanu Tzufoino is for the north. It's very interesting that Raphael is at the back, because the back means that when you have your 2 foot, actually the right foot to the front and the left foot to the back, then it means that the left foot, as the Zohar says, is where Raphael is, because the left foot is also where the Gidanusha was actually healed by Raphael from Yaakov Avinu, and it was also on the left side, on the left foot. And so the left foot, which are at the back, is where Raphael is. So Raphael is at the back when you stand to the east, and in the front of you is Uriel, and then you have Gavriel to the north. Gavriel is also giving Oisha V'chovot, so Chazal say, if somebody wants to become rich, he should yat spin, he should go up to the north, and whoever wants to learn kind of Torah should actually go more this Oirich Yomim, and the Torah is Ma'arich Yomim, and therefore he should go to the right, which is to the south. So it's there's this concept of the 4 corners and having the Maluchim on the 4 different sides is something that exists already from early on. It's not only in the Zoya, but it's also in the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. I don't have it here right now, but in the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer also mentions the same structure. So it seems that it is already a very, very early source that these Uriel, maybe I think there is a different name in one of the angels. There is sometimes a bit of different names that are given to the angels. Now, what is interesting is not only do the angels have a name, not all of them, as we shall see soon, but they also have what we call a stamp. In other words, a stamp, a choisom, is kind of a symbol that represents them. And there is a very interesting halachic dispute that started in the Middle Ages, in the time of the Rambam, as the Yereim, which lived in the time of the Rambam. Rashi lived even before the Rambam, but the Yereim wrote in his Tayag Mitzvahs, Siman Tov, 400 mitzvah is mezuzah, and there he brings down, I'm talking about the version of the Varsho, the printed in Varsho, which is a different Yereim than most people have in their shuls. This is one that was found and is much more complete, and actually is used mostly today as a reference of the Yereim, because the Yereim that most shuls have is actually a condensed version with certain changes also even in the kirsois that they have inside, and sometimes even change the halacha lemasa. So in there he brings down that there was a minik, and I will just read it to you. Ulevad, he says, besides the halacha shemeseches menuches or amures b'mezuzah, that was talking, the menuches is all the halachas of those who have learned Daf Yomi not so long ago, They remember that we've learned all the halachas of mezuzah are actually concentrated in Meseches Menuchos. Hukulu Oilom says, besides that, the world has started to have a hergel, a minak, letoisefes shmiras habayis, to add on to the shmiras habayis, to the protection of the house, lichter besoif ashuros, to write at the end of the sentences that we have in the Torah, choismois u'sheimois shel hamaluchim, to write down the choismois, the stamps of the symbols that represent, to draw the symbol of those maluchim, and also the names, eventually the names of the maluchim. And then he starts to say what they did. Shema v'ahavto leilu beis mikrois koisev v'choisev ko ko ko, yutke 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 3 times, koisev v'yadvorim v'shenamtom v'vaner v'debartovam, etc. v'choisev michoel, koisev v'shor b'chov komecho kshartom lois alodecho v'oilu t'fois v'choisev Gavriel v'choisev zeh, and he brings down even the picture that even in this print they bring down the pictures. I don't know if you can see it. Yes. So you can see here the pictures, the strange pictures that actually were put into the mezuzahs. And you can see those as well. He tries to put them also how, I don't know how accurate it is with a version of the print towards what the Bal Yereim himself wrote, but in any case, so these were symbols and words that were added to the mezuzah in the time of the Yereim. He says it's not a mitzvah and it's not a ikuva. Ve'eno mikuva afle mitzvah elo tosefes shmira. So he says it's not a problem to add them on, but it only adds shmira, but it's not a ikuva and definitely not a mitzvah. It's not like you have to do it. If you don't do it, you're not mekayim a mitzvah, etc. Similar, also Rashi brings down here in the Mefoirah Shir, Toyafos Reim, he brings down that v'zelo shon sefer apardes agudel Rashi zal simen reish pehei ubesof oretz Dalet Simonim, Utzricho Zain Malochim, Besoif Shurois Advorim, Michoel, Vesimen, Besoif Shurois Shobocho Gavriel, and then Azriel, and Tzatkiel. So all kind of names of Malochim that is not part of the 4 that I mentioned before, that were also added on into the mezuzah. So that's also similar to what the Yereim is bringing. So this was the minhag in France in the Middle Ages, is to actually combine 2 shmiras habayis, one that was already the mezuzah, of course, but the other one that actually started off by saying that those maluchim that are protecting, because they're surrounding the kisei hakuvod, and therefore they are protecting, so why not they should use those names also for protect our homes. However, and that's a big machloikes, the Rambam in Spain, or at least in Egypt, he was extremely vehement against this minhag. He writes in Hilchos of Mezuzah, Halacha Dalet, Elu shekoisvin mibifnim shemois hamalochim, those who write in the middle of the Mezuzah the names of the Malochim, or shemois kedoshim, or posuk, or choismois. He speaks about the choismois, the stamps, meaning the symbols, the squares, and all kind of different symbols. Who have bechlal mi she'ein lo lem chelek lo mabor. So hey, it goes very, very strongly against them. He says that whoever does that doesn't even have a chelek lo mabor, possibly because it's similar to avodah zorah, or maybe whatever it is. Maybe because, as we shall see, the Rambam held that if you believe that there are multiple things that exist in this transcendent worlds that can act by themselves, is actually kind of a believing that against the unity of Hashem, because only Hashem is up there, and we shall see soon. She'elu atipshim, says he continues, those are tipshim, these are stupid people. Lo yidai lohem shebotlu hamitzvah elo she'osu mitzvah gedoylo shehu yichud Hashem shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu ve'ahavto ve'avodoso ve'ki'ilu hu k'meir shel anuas atzmo. So not only do they do things which don't help, because he does not believe in these things, but also that they've taken a mitzvah which should represent the yichud of Hashem and the love and the avodah from it, that we have to follow and believe in Him, and we're using it for a personal kemeo. Kemeo is an amulet that the person uses in order for personal benefit. And so he's using something that is so beautiful and so holy for personal use. And so these are tipshim, these are stupid people. And that's a very, very interesting machloikes between the French and the Spanish Rishonim. Eventually, because of the Shulchan Aruch, this practice has completely disappeared in Europe also. I've never seen these mezuzahs anymore. So basically we see here Malochim, angels that have names and that are positioned in the four corners of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of the Kisei HaKovod, that we are saying in our prayers, in the Kriyas Shema Shel Amito. These are also, of course, mentioned in the Tanakh, especially at the end. They are mentioned, but basically they are used in our many liturgy, like the Tfilis, etc. And there's also even, as we said, the Machlokes Rishonim, if you're allowed to add them on into the mezuzahs or not, and if it helps or it doesn't help. Now, that's something which has a particularity, that those angels, they have actually a name. But we also have a type of an angel that do not have names, and these are mentioned as well. We mention them specifically in the morning. So always in the morning, we mention a lot of different kinds of Malochim, which are mentioned also in the Tanakh, which is the Chayes, the Yofanim, the Chayes HaKodesh. We have the Chashmalim, we have the how do you call them? The Srofim. We also have the Srofim, the Kruvim, and all kind of different types of Malochim. So before I gave names of Malochim themselves, so individual Malochim, but you also have sometimes where Chazal and the Novi speaks about a type of a Maloch without giving them particular private names, but they are the categories, the species, different species in Malochim. And so this already has a source even before the Torah in the Sefer Yetzirah. I have here a Hebrew version of the Sefer Yetzirah, and in the Perek Aleph Mishnah Yud Beis, that's apparently how you're saying it. Arba Eish Mimayim Chokak v'Chotzabo Kisei HaKovod Srofim Poifanim v'Chayes HaKodesh u'Malachi HaShores. And so they already mentioned the species of the Malochim, and we shall see what's the fundamental difference between the species and the named Malochim. But Rabbi Kaplan here wants to explain that these are what I call the vertical descending of the Shechina towards this world. Basically, in the Arizal already speaks that the oil Ein Sof, if there would not be a protective layer, buffer zone between the light of the Ein Sof, of the infinity, and the world in where we are today, then it would have the light of that Ein Sof, the Oil HaMakif, would completely crush and burn everything that exists. If we exist on this world and we are not burned by the light of the Ein Sof, it's because there are multiple layers. There are kind of spheres that are surrounding us, and these spheres there are actually four big ones, four worlds. Basically, they're called worlds for some reason, and these are Olam Ha'atzilus, Olam Ha'Bria, Olam Ha'Yetzira, and Olam Ha'Asir. We are in the Olam Ha'Asir, but there are multiple layers that protects us from collapsing together, from being burned by the light. So it's kind of filters and buffers towards the lower you go into our world, the more filtered and megushan, more not so soft anymore, becomes harder and harder, from something which is purely transcendent to something which is already completely as a material that you can touch and feel. And so basically all those four layers, according to Rabbi Kaplan, have also represents the different types of Malochim. So there are different angels that are in the world where we are living. So the highest level in the Olam Ha'atzilus, he says it's the Malach HaKasriel. There, I think it's only one Malach, I think. And then you have in the Olam Ha'Bria, you have the Srofim. The Srofim are the highest. They are called Srofim because they already are mamish by the fire. They kind of bring up the fire, and they get burned kind of from the fire of what is so high of them. And then you have the Chayos, is the Olam Ha'Yetzira, and the Olam Ha'Asir are the Oifanim. It's the Oifanim are kind of the things that are the wheels that are turning. That's something very interesting, because it means, in other words, that the Chayos, which are the Maluchim that are in the middle. And so they convey the tefillos, the prayers of Klal Yisrael, that they convey them and they bring them up to all the way up to the Kisei HaKuvot. He brings on also that the Malachi Ashores are the Maluchim that theoretically we could see. So all the other Maluchim we cannot see, it's impossible to see them. But the only Maluchim, type of Maluchim, which is the lowest of the lowest, which represents also are very close to us in this world, Olam Asiyah, are the Malachi Ashores. So the Malachi Ashores are the ones that you could see theoretically, but all the other Maluchim you cannot see. So the Srofim, the Chais, and the Ifanim, you cannot see them. In the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, also there is there a mentioning, and which is apparently the source of the Anshek Neses Agdoilo to put in the way that we daven. That how it works is that the Srofim, which are the highest kind of Maluchim, they are saying Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh Hashem Tzedakos. Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh. They say the tefillah of Kodesh, 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 and then you have the Chayes Veifanim. They are saying Baruch Kvod Hashem Min Koimoy, and then it says the next order is that Klal Yisrael says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then Kodesh Baruch when he hears those three layers. So we also are kind of Maluchim in that sense. So we follow what from up to down. When we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Hashem says, respond to them, Ani Hashem Elokeichem, Asher Goyalchem, or one of these expressions. I don't have the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer in front of me, but in any case, he brings it down. And this is exactly what we do. Every morning we are saying Kodesh, Kodesh, then we are saying Baruch Kvod Hashem Min Koimo, and then we are saying Shema Yisrael, and then we are finishing off with Ani Hashem Elokeichem, and then also with Goal Yisrael, because the Goal Yisrael goes together with the Ani Hashem Elokeichem. In order to combine them together, we are not separating the Elokeichem from the Emes, so that we can it as if we are saying Ani Hashem Elokeichem Goal Yisrael, and so it's kind of to combine them both together. We are also doing it actually in the Kedusha of Musaf of Shabbos and Yom Tov, where we also are saying Kodesh, we say Baruch, and then we say Shema Yisrael, and then we finish up Ani Hashem Elokeichem. So basically, this is very similar to the Tefillas as we have it today. So basically, these different types of Maluchim are the ones that also exist. So we have two types of Maluchim. We have Maluchim that have a name and that are individual, and then we have Maluchim that we only describe them as being a species, a kind of a Maluch, and we don't know how many they are, but they have a specific role. The way that I understand it from Rav Aryeh Kaplan is that one type of Maluchim are the vertical, I call them the vertical pane, P-A-N-E, so they are the ones that are actually connecting the tefillos, whatever we say, towards all the way up to the Kisei HaKuvot and also back down. And so they are the chimney, if you want, of the communication channel between this world and the upper world. While on the horizontal plane, all the way up there are the four different sides of the Kisei HaKuvot. You have the four different Maluchim and the multiple Maluchim that follow, that are all actually helping in fulfilling particular tasks that Hashem asked them to do on this world. And these tasks can be regular tasks as well, mostly regular tasks. So is this what we also call the Sar of the nations, the Sar of Israel, the Sar of the fire, the Sar of strength, the Sar of light, the Sar of darkness, the Sar. There's all kind of Sar ministers, if you want, of the different things that happen on this world is actually regulated through those Maluchim that have a name. And according to the Kabbalist, and we shall see also according to the Rambam, this is actually, they are working with a Galgalim. So as you know, in the Middle Ages, they actually described the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and there is the world of Teva and the world of how things are evolving, the fact that we can move, the fact that we can create something. These are all helped by the Galgalim, the different layers of Galgalim, and they are represented by the different planets and stars that are in the sky. And so each star or each planet is actually in a separate galgal, where he turns around from one side to the other, and so is the sun, and so is also the moon, which is the lowest of all the galgalim. And those galgalim, what they are doing, their job is actually to fulfill the will of God, the will of Kutchubrihu, into this world. And so it is kind of how you want to say, it's something that goes down and gives over to the next galgal, and then it comes down to this world. And these are the maluchim, are actually the neshama of these different galgalim. So they are the ones that are being appointed to move around those planets and those moons and those stars in order to do something so that in the world things should happen or should not happen. And that's something which is believed as well by the Rambam, as we shall see. But in any case, so basically there is a stira, there is a contradiction. When were the Maluchim created? So one Medrash says the Maluchim were created on Monday, the second day already, and one Medrash says that they were created on Thursday. And so Rabbi Kaplan has a very interesting chidush, which he wants to say is that since we have two kinds of maluchim, you have the maluchim that don't have a name, but they are different species. You have the chayes, you have the rifanim, you have the istrophim, and possibly also the kruvim and the malachi ashoretz, as we saw, and etc. There are other kinds of maluchim. So they were created already on the second day. Basically, those are also maluchim that seemingly, according to one medrash, are created and then they've been disposed. So they disappear and then they create every single morning again anew. On the other hand, you have other kinds of maluchim which have a name and therefore they are forever. Once they've been created, they are there forever. They have a continuous life, kind of, if you want. And those were, since they are related and connected to the astronomical bodies like the planets, the moons, and the stars. Therefore, they could only have been created on the fifth day, because the fourth day, where all the stars and the planets and the moons were created to fill up the world, the Shomayim, and so therefore those Malachim could only have been created after that, which is on the fifth day. But they will always exist, like us, like humanity in the world will probably also exist for as much as Nitzchis can exist, as the Torah is Nitzchis. But in any case, this is something which is very interesting because it gives us a different understanding. It's a very big chidush from Rabbi Kaplan, but I think that it makes a lot of sense. And to say that you have two kinds of maluchim, like I explained, you have the vertical and you have the horizontal, which are around the Kisei HaKuvay. And these are the named maluchim. Now, what is interesting is what is the opinion of the Rambam on all this? And so, if you look in the Moira Nevuchim, it's going to be very difficult to understand what exactly he says. And so, therefore, I would like to maybe read you from the Sefer Ikrim. My son Yechiel, Hashem, sent me the link to that, and I actually didn't know that the Sefer Ikrim also speaks about the Maluchim. It's clear, let's put it that way, let's start already straight away saying and reading it directly from the Sefer Ikrim, and he means the philosophy, he clearly refers to the Rambam, and of course based on Aristo, and the Chachmei HaTorah, which is the more traditional Chachomim and Chazal. So there is no question about that. Everybody agrees to their existence. The Rambam could not even say that they will not be able to exist because the Nevi'im say it clearly. It is not even of Chazal. It goes all the way up to the Nevi'im that are mentioning the Malochim, gives them the name. Some of Malochim have been named already directly. Some Malochim, the Chayes and the Rifanim, have been in Yecheskel and the Matan Merkobo and all the other things that are clearly mentioning different types of Malochim, how they function, and some of them are mentioning names of Malochim, so they have really their own identity. And so he cannot refuse and he cannot say, negate that just based on the fact that this is Agadah, and sometimes one should not take too much literal meaning of an Agadah. So here they all agree. But the Rambam specifically, and that's a bit annoying for us, but he basically believes in Maluchim because Aristo, his big master, believed also in Maluchim. But then, as we shall see, there is kind of how do you say it, where things digress from the general Haredi point of view, but that's what he is going to say now. The only thing is that they all agree but they are disagreeing on what they are and also on how many they are. Since in the appearances, how they are only sichlius, meaning they are only transcendent, they are only what we call geistliche ruach, they are only things that are not material, they're only a tzura without yuli, without highly, or without matter, without choimer also it's called. It cannot be that there should be multiple separate individuals of Maluchim up in the Shemaim. It's not possible. Because there cannot be more than one. Because the moment that you have more than one, that means that they are separated from each other. And in the world where there are no separations, there are no borders, because it's only, how do you call it, it's only ruchnius, it's only transcendent, and therefore you cannot have multiple things existing in this dimension. So everything that is similar in the tzuro, let's say two maluchim, they have the same tzuro, but in the hiyuli, as we saw, the highly, which is the Plato and Aristo's definition and invention, where they came up with this concept of a choimer and a tzura. So although the tzura is the same, but what differentiates them would be the choimer. We have the same tzura, all human beings have the same tzura, but what differentiates us from another is the choimer. And so therefore, since we are not, since they don't have a choimer, they don't have the yuli, this is the Greek word for choimer, and here's very clearly how he defines it. He says that physically it's not possible to have that you should have two maluchim that are completely ruchnius that should live in the same dimension of transcendence, because that would mean that there is a border, a physical border to separate them, and that's not possible. And so therefore he cannot believe that there are a multitude of maluchim up there. So he says, "Uleze hoyo ha'achdus nichbat me'ha'shniyos ulefi sha'maluchim she'em askolim hanivdolim einum ba'ale choimer," because they are not from ba'ale choimer. He uses the word choimer instead of hiyuli, the Hebraization of this Greek concept. Lo yotzur b'shum tzav b'mash yiyu achilu b'neim elo k'shir echod ilu ve'echod olul. Only when one is a ilo and the other one is an olul. In other words, one is the cause and the other one is the effect. So basically what he wants to say here, and it's a bit of a difficult philosophical and physical discussion, is that the only way that you can have a multitude of individuals within the transcendent world, it is only if one is the source, the creator of the next. So if there is a creator and there is a next, in that case you can have two. But then one is always moving the other. So one is dependent on the one before him. Then you can have a multitude of individuals in the transcendent world. It's based on Aristo in order to understand that God, that when we speak about the God, that we speak about the very first God, the Elohim. In other words, is the very first which he did not require anybody to create him. Because otherwise, if that's the case, then we would better refer to his creator in order to refer to God. So God means, in other words, what we refer to God is by definition, the creator of everything, the creator that does not have a creator himself. And whatever this is the one that we will define as God, and his name is Yudke Vovke, and that is the one that we are going to actually serve and believe in. And this is what Hashem presented himself. That's a very interesting viewpoint, because it would mean indeed that you can have multiple things that are in the heavens, but they are always being created by and being pushed and moved by something that is higher than himself. And that's how you can have a multitude. And so therefore he says that and he says, therefore the philosophers will say, כמספר הגלגלים שהם תשעו או יצורו עם החומר, מה שתחת הגלגל הירחי, כמו שאמרנו בפרק שלפני זה. And so basically what he says is that the maximum numbers of malochim that you could have in that case is 10 or 9, because of the different galgalim that you have, and each galgal has created the next galgal, is the mover of the next galgal, and the next galgal is the creator of the next galgal. And so these spheres, these cycles, as they want to call them, I don't know if you want to say, but these are the different, where you have the cause and the effect. And so this is what the Greek philosophers say. And then you have the kat, he calls them, this is the Rambam himself, Bale HaTorah, which are Bale Torah, Sheninshchu Achar Ze Hadas, that follow the Aristotelian belief, Yoimru, Kemispar HaMalochim, Kemispar HaGalgalim, HaMisnoyan, Betnuis Mischalpin, Kilochot Mehem, Yesh Mania Sichli Miyuchat, Yanihu Betnuis HaMiyuchedes, ולפי מספר הגלגלים שהם הכרחים להניח כדי שישמעו היוזם כל תנועות הנירות הכוכבים הם מנטס או נום. So basically, they kind of disagree, only because Aristotle said there can only be 9 or 10 malachim, angels. Rambam seems to be saying that there are 49 or 50. I personally did not see it in the Moreh Nevuchim. I might have missed it, but when I was learning the Moreh Nevuchim, I did not find this opinion. So I don't know where the Sefer Eikim takes it from, but I'm sure that it is somewhere, and I must have misread and passed that sign or that number somewhere. And so basically the Rambam believes that in the whole thing that there is an ilo and an olul, there is a cause and an effect. It's a maximum that they have in the heavens is the 49 or 50, which represents the 50 Share Bino. And so therefore they believe that this is how it could have happened. So basically, they only believe that they have the 50 different types of angels. And then he continues saying that we don't have a problem with that philosophical issue, because we believe that since the transcendent world is something that we don't understand, so we are not bound by all kinds of rules. And we say, no, there can be angels that can have an individual that can be on the same level. And they are separated by their individuality, which is their seichel, their intellect, and therefore it could be. But it's clear that the Rambam's point of view seems to be saying that these are only kind of it's like a Swiss watch, which has all kinds of things that are turning, and one turns makes the other one turn, and etc. And that's how it comes down to this world in a multitude, and that this multitude is only 49. And it's also related to the celestial bodies that exist up in the astronomical world. And so it comes out, if you want, that the Rambam is not very impressed by the existence of angels which has wings, as described in the Novi, and he would rather say that these are more, how do you call them, allegorically or parabolic image of what the Novi saw, and therefore also even the Malochim that came to visit Avram for the Rambam is a dimion, eventually even maybe a dream that Avram had when the 3 Malochim came to him. And Rav Shechki once explained that Vayashkem Avram Baboiker is actually the end of that dream. So when he got up, we never saw actually that he went to sleep, and so therefore the whole story that Avram saw was during a dream. And then I asked him Avram Baboiker, and then he woke up, and then therefore he knew what he knew more or less what he needed to do. It's a very interesting concept from the Rambam. As we said, these are very little Rishonim that agree with him. There are so many Gemorahs, Midrashim that are referring to the Maluchim as being individuals that are doing a job, even describing those individuals, even giving them indeed how many wings they have, like in the Novi describes them. The Gemara in Chagiga speaks about the fact that we sometimes see Maluchim that have 6 wings, and then we see the same Maluchim that have 4 wings. And so the Gemara Chagigi says, Kan Livni, Chorban Abayis, Kan Achi, Chorban Abayis. And the numbers also, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands Maluchim. I don't know, there's so many Gemorahs that are speaking about exact numbers and saying that those numbers were reduced also in after Chorban Abayis. Things like that are clearly pointing out that the Maluchim are real existing creatures of Hashem. They were created on the 2nd day, on the 5th day, as we explained before. And so we don't have this philosophical Aristotelian problem, which is a physical impossibility to say that something would exist in the transcendent world, because the rules that we have imposed on the transcendent world maybe are not applying in those worlds. So the Rambam that took Aristo as a truth and with the logic of our world, and which makes sense, definitively makes sense. There's nothing to say about that. But since we don't understand what is up there, we don't know the real rules that exist in the upper world. So therefore, we cannot use our brains, our intellect, in order to define, to say that you cannot have two individual intellects that are working independently together and are separated from each other within the world of transcendence. This is a rule that maybe does not hold in reality up in the upper world. And there is a way of how those two can still be separate. But we simply don't know what it could be. Although it sounds very theoretical, but it is theoretically also possible. We don't know, because as long as we have not seen it, we don't know what type of rule exists in the transcendent world. So basically, a short answer: yes, the Rambam believed in Maluchim, and but maybe not in the Maluchim as we see it as separate entities that have their own will and their own intellect, and they have kind of wings. We do believe that there are Maluchim that have their own will, but they are more kind of are structured in a vertical way, in the means that they are always the creator or the ilo, the source of energy, and that is for the next level Maluch, which is the source and the energy of the next level Maluch, etc., until we come to the moon. You remember, the Rambam holds that the moon and all the stars, they have own will. They are living creatures, as we say, and the Maluchim are actually maybe considered a neshama, that what gives them exactly this will. It's like a human being has a guf, but he also has a neshama, which is the intellect, which creates his thinking process and his desires and his ambition, and it's something that will remain even after the guf is not here anymore. And similarly, you also have this, and this could be by the celestial bodies, and this could also be the Maluchim that are the neshamas of these bodies, and so therefore they are the ones that push them in order for them to move from one side to another, or they're being pushed by the previous galgal that is a bit higher than them, etc., until we come to the Kitzei HaKovod. So that's it. A bit of a complicated shir, I admit, but it's one that I think it's important to go through. It's not a hocus pocus shir in this time, on how to use Maluchim and what can you do with those Maluchim, should you call them or not. But it's clear that it's a subject that, as in the Middle Ages, has been very well documented and discussed. And big thanks to Yechiel, my son, who have given me this the Sefer Eichlim because I think that there he is, it's a Mama based, Perek Yud based, where you can see where he brings down the Rambam, the philosophical point of view, and then why the Chachmei Torah disagree with him, and how can we still believe in Malochim with wings, kind of. Of course, we know these are not real wings like the birds, but in any case that they can be intellectual, separated individuals, creations that are living on the same dimension of transcendence.